All right, good morning, everybody. This is Wednesday morning's edition of Ask the Master Auto Technician, and every day I try to give something you can use to get your car staying on the road. And James Auto Center has been running a special here for the last week or so, $29.99 oil change. That's regular oil and a 30,000 mile inspection. This is normally about a $60 to $70 value. You go anywhere just to do all the inspection points. We do everything from what kind of antifreeze you have to your tail lights and brake lights and everything in between working. We can tell you where your oil leaks might be or where you're starting to get oil leaks, and these are things that we do as part of our service. And we've been offering that to get some new people coming here, get some new customers. And one of the things we do notice is that when you offer a very inexpensive service like that, some people say, well, that seems too good to be true. Well, it is good, but it is true as well. We don't make any money off of it. It really is. We don't make anything. By the time we pay for all the materials, parts, and everything, it's kind of like grocery stores selling milk. They don't make any money off milk either, but we at least have an opportunity to meet you and get to see your car and see if we can help sell you service. Well, what we have noticed is a lot of people who do come in on this special are the customers that go to shops and they get their fluids changed, but they put in the wrong fluid. You'd be surprised how many cars I saw come in here that's supposed to have a pink antifreeze for Chrysler, which is called a hybrid organic acid technology, and I look down at it and it's not. It's an oat antifreeze, organic acid technology, not a hybrid. And so just in a matter of a few months, that water pump's going to start leaking or something's going to fail. But the customer thinks they got a great job on, they're down to 50-50 mixture, like they're supposed to, and their pH is good, but they either don't have reserve alkalinity or they do have reserve alkalinity. And the hybrid cars call for reserve alkalinity. And that's where it paints on a coating at the same time it's trying to change the molecular surface structure of the metal chemically. It's like bluing a gun. It's trying to do that, but at the same time it's painting a coating on it. So if you ever have a Chrysler and you ever get a leak, you see that white streaking coming from the antifreeze. That's the reserve alkalinity, or the little vitamins inside there that it needs to have. I see that on Chryslers. I see people doing the same thing on Nissans. Nissans are supposed to have a certain type extended life green or a blue antifreeze in it. They'll come in with regular silica-based inorganic acid technology antifreeze from what we used 30 years ago. And then they wonder, well, is that the reason my water pump started leaking about 6 months ago? And when they did my water pump, they did that. And I said, well, I don't know if that's what caused it before, but I can tell you this, if you had that antifreeze in there before, I don't know if you did or not, there's a strong possibility that did cause it, because that's usually what kills water pumps. Is either the wrong antifreeze or a restricted radiator. When I say the wrong antifreeze, weak or neglected antifreeze or the wrong antifreeze, and a restricted radiator. Radiators over a period of time, when I say time, it takes about, on these plastic aluminum radiators, we see they last on average 10 years. Now, some people say, well, I've got a car that's 25 years old. Well, you may not have a plastic aluminum radiator. You may have what's, brass copper. The plastic aluminum radiators, the plastic we found on average lasts about 100,000 miles. At 100,000 miles, we start noticing steam erosion, or what I call discoloration. When you start seeing the discoloration of the black plastic of the radiators, when they start turning a brown and have kind of a mottled look to it, tells me it's steam erosion. It's soon to fail. And when you see it change colors, when it goes from black to brown, it's just a matter of not a matter of if it's going to, it's a matter of when it's going to blow. And they will blow. Remember, your radiators are running around 15 to 18 psi pressure, and it's like a balloon, and and it expands and contracts, and over a period of time, that expansion contraction causes fatigue. Same thing happens with aluminum. A lot of times, aluminum fails without giving you any warning. That's one of the reasons that they don't make bow and arrows out of aluminum, because there's so many times you can flex aluminum before it fails without any warning whatsoever. So that's one of the reasons they don't use aluminum where things are expanding or contracting a large amounts. But in a radiator, it's not so bad. But about 10 years is all we get out of them. After about 10 years, we noticed that instead of them getting rid of 40, 50, 60 degrees of heat like they did when they were brand new, the car comes in, it's 80 degrees outside with 80% humidity, and we're sitting there at idle with the air conditioning on, we're getting rid of anywhere from 30 to 40 degrees heat between the top hose and the bottom hose. That's how a radiator works. It gets rid of heat. It absorbs, it cools that that engine down, and that's its purpose. But if it's not able to do that purpose, things start to go south in a hurry. And when I talk about things going south in a hurry, things that are affected by a radiator not cooling well, we know your engine's affected, but engines can handle 230, 240 degrees with no problem whatsoever. I know it sounds hard to believe, but if it's a pressurized system, got the right antifreeze in it, the cooling fans don't come on a lot of these cars to 225, 230. So that's the cooling fans. So if you don't have your air conditioning on, that cooling fan won't come on to around 225 degrees Fahrenheit or 225 to 230 Fahrenheit when that fan comes on. I've had some people say, I don't have my air conditioning when my car runs hotter than it's supposed to. It's kind of a cooler day outside, and I was driving down the road and came to a red light, and I saw my temperature gauge go to almost 3/4 of the way up, and then all of a sudden the fans came on, it cooled back down. I've never seen that before. I said, well, if you have your air conditioning on, your fan runs constantly, you don't have that swing. If you have your air conditioning off, that fan's not going to come on till it reaches a certain threshold, which is 225 to 230 degrees Fahrenheit. On a lot of General Motors cars out there, that's how they work. I don't make them up. That's just how it happens. So cars can handle the temperature so long as they got the right antifreeze. But what can handle the temperature is transmissions. They have a hard time handling temperature under severe driving conditions. Yes, they can handle it, and synthetic fluid is the way most of them are going right now. Most transmission fluids are synthetic. General Motors synthetic, Chrysler synthetic, Honda synthetic. They're just about all synthetic, so they can handle it a lot better than they used to. But still, you don't really, once they get over 200 degrees, things start to head south really, really quick. So that's the purpose of making sure you have a good radiator, is to take care of your transmission, your automatic transmission. And the other thing to take care of is your air conditioning. If you've got a condenser, if you've got a radiator that's not getting rid of heat, not allowing air to pass through because maybe it's restricted with leaves or dirt or mud or whatever, which we see quite often. We see that very often where things get in between the radiator and condenser. That makes your car run hotter. Your car's not getting rid of heat, and your air conditioning pressure is a lot higher. So it doesn't cool very well when you're sitting at a red light, or maybe it doesn't cool at all. I've seen it where it cools for first minute or two, and all of a sudden the compressor kicks off and it stops cooling. That's because the high side pressures get so high because you got such a restriction that the fans can't come on and work and do their job. The fans may come on, but nothing happens. You can't move air through the condenser and the radiator at the same time. That's why it's very, very important to make sure that your weakest link on your car is your cooling system. And that involves your radiator and, of course, everything that's involved in there. That's your heater, your hoses, your heater hoses, your thermostat, your coolant, your water pump. These things are very, very important. And people talk to me about, well, my owner's manual says 5 years, 150,000 miles on antifreeze. And I said, yes, under normal conditions, that's great. But what's a normal driver? And, of course, when I tell people that, they say, ask them that, normal driver, what do you mean normal driver? I said, how is your driving conditions? Do you get up in the morning, start the car up, put the kids in it, take them to school, come back, shut the car off, then go to the grocery store, come back, shut the car off? Do you do a lot of short trips? Do you do a lot of idling? Are you waiting for the kids to get out of school, waiting in line? And then what kind of driving do you do? Well, of course, that's normal driving. That's how everybody drives. I said, well, that's not normal driving. That's severe service. Normal driving is starting your car up and driving it down the highway at highway speeds for an extended period of time for over an hour, and then getting where you're going, shutting the car off, not doing extended idling, not in a hot, dusty condition, not in a very wet condition. There's so many variables out there that make it severe service, whether it's too hot, too cold, too wet. These things make it play toll. So 99.9% of you out there listening to me or watching me, you're a severe service driver. So if it says 5 years, cut everything in half. What? Yeah, honest to goodness, that's what they're saying. So 2.5 years or 75,000 miles. I kind of run things down and tell people, say, every 2 years, every 30,000 miles on your antifreeze, every 2 years, every 30,000 miles on your brake fluid, just fluids in general. If you do that, I've got cars running around with 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 miles out on the road that have got the original master cylinders, got the original water pumps, got the original, they don't have the original radiators, but they got everything else that's pretty much original because they take care of the car. Now they've changed their hoses, they've changed their radiators, they changed their thermostats, they changed their oil, they changed their brake fluid. And when they get about 150 to 200,000 miles on them, a lot of times they need a brake job, they change their calipers and hoses because they're not working the way they're supposed to. They're dragging the calipers. The pads are dragging against the rotors. We all see that all the time. We see someone who's got the front wheels are black and the back wheels are not. And the reason the front wheels are black is because the pads they're rubbing constantly, and that's usually what causes. Now, it could be because the people just don't wash their wheels too, but if you see one that builds up a lot of brake dust on it, and we all see them out there, you can wash your wheels and the next day they're covered with brake dust, you've got something wrong. They're not supposed to do it. Either you got the wrong type pads on there or you got calipers that are dragging. Normally, that's what it is. You know, a lot of people just push the pistons back in, put pads back on it. When you do that, you're asking for big problems because you push all that nasty stuff that's in that caliper back into the anti-lock brake system and into the reservoir of the master cylinder. There's actually check valves in there. If you do that, you can actually put trash in between those check valves and damage them, causing you to have a low brake pedal or not to have a brake pedal at all. I know all those things just seem complicated, but cars have gotten more complicated over the years. We're not working on cars with metal master cylinders anymore that you can't look inside. We're not working on cars that have green antifreeze on them anymore. We're not working on cars that take regular oil. Just about every car made today takes synthetic oil. Just about every car out there, I know every car out there takes extended life antifreeze. I know every car out there requires a certain kind of lightweight oil. And the lightweight oil is either a 0W16, is about as low as I know it, is about as thin as I know it gets, a 0 weight in the winter and a 16 weight when it's hot, all the way up to maybe a 5W30, maybe a 540. That's about as heavy an oil as that's out there being used. There's no 10W40s being used, and I don't think there's any 10W30s being used. I think it's either 520s, 530s, 516s, or 526, or 026, excuse me. 016, 026. Those are the different weights out there. Toyotas and Hondas are now using 0W26, I believe. Yeah, you can use a 0W30 or 0W20, but I'm just telling you that's what they recommend for them out there. Things are changing, and they've been changing for a while. I mean, there's I see people coming in, they've done their maintenance, so they think, but remember, just because you get your antifreeze changed doesn't mean they put the right antifreeze in it. Make sure the right antifreeze is going in your car. If your car calls for this color antifreeze, put that back in it. Make sure it's the right kind. Make sure it's an oat antifreeze. If your car calls for a blue type antifreeze, put that back in like Mercedes or Honda. But it's got to be with hybrid organic acid. These are HOATs. This is an oat. And you got POTS. I mean, and you got IACs and inorganic acid technology, IATs. These are the different kinds of fluids out there, and they all mean something different. They all affect the inside of your engine and your cooling system differently. So if you put the wrong antifreeze in there, you're asking not for a headache, you're asking for catastrophe down the line. Maybe not this year, maybe next. Hey, this is James Morris. We'll be back in a few minutes. Got Karen Schoen calling, and we'll see what's on her mind, and we'll be right back. Summer is here and the days are getting longer and hotter. Call James Auto Center for a free cooling system evaluation and consultation. Give us a call, 850-763-0555 today.
Part of what I'd like to let you know is what we do and how we work our system. Basically, we've got about 700 stocking dealers scattered around the 15 counties here in the Big Bend area of the state. I run a fleet of trucks, vans, and what we call hotshot vehicles to deliver to our dealers quickly so they can help service you as fast and efficiently as they can. Provide timely and efficient service, and we're there to take care of our dealers who in turn can take care of their customers.
If you want the best deal in town for tires, you need to call Baytown Tires at 873-8900.
Hanson and the guys at Baytown Tires take pride in serving Panama City for over 20 years. Baytown Tires on Highway 98 in St. Andrews. All service work backed by a nationwide warranty.
Water is too powerful to fight alone. Mr. Router Plumbing. Sink, shower, and toilet emergency drain services.
If you want the best deal in town for tires, you need to call Baytown Tires at 873-8900.
Hanson and the guys at Baytown Tires take pride in serving Panama City for over 20 years. Baytown Tires on Highway 98 in St. Andrews. All service work backed by a nationwide warranty.
All right, welcome back to our show. It's what is it? It's Wednesday morning. I forget so easily. It really is. Good morning, Karen Schoen. Thanks for calling my show this morning. I know you had to get up early.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well this morning. It just seems like it's every morning gets earlier and earlier and earlier. It seems like the older I get.
Pretty soon you'll be going to bed before you get up.
That's right. Now, how was your show last night?
Very, very interesting. We had an attorney on last night, and we spoke very, very at length about the Mueller investigation. And I asked him, I said, I don't understand something, and I don't know if other people understand it either. But if you have an investigation on something that doesn't exist, then how can you cite people for committing a crime on a crime of a subject that doesn't exist?
Good question.
So it was very, very interesting because basically there is no root for any of crimes that Mueller is investigating. And I guess they're all waiting to see what is going to happen with Judge Ellis and if he's going to let the Manafort conviction stand and even have a trial.
So
because it's like anything else. If something doesn't exist, how can you build on it?
Well, if you say it, remember someone said if you repeat a lie often enough and big enough, it becomes truth. Maybe that's what it is. I mean, maybe that's part of the propaganda out there. I don't know. I'm just an auto mechanic, but I know that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's part of the propaganda out there.
Well, I was really upset. I think Freedom of Information about 2 or 3 years ago they released the information about the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and because after 50 years they're allowed to release it. And I checked it out. It never really happened. Not the way they said it happened. It was a false flag. And we lost 50,000 soldiers, sailors, and Marines over a lie.
Yeah. And that's, I think, what is clouding everybody because the communists, they are just such liars that where is the truth? And that's a big deal. That's a very big question. He also said that Mueller is Mueller is investigating and has forced an investigation of Manafort in 2 separate districts, forcing 2 different judges to come up with conclusions basically on the same crime. And I said, okay, so doesn't that mean that we the people are paying for this trial twice? Yes. Yes. So we're paying for the same trial twice because they did one in the District of Virginia and one in D.C. But basically it's the same issue. There's no crime. There's absolutely no crime. And then he said that in reality, the whole entire investigation should be null and void because the FBI violated their own rules. And one of their rules says that in order to investigate someone, there has to be a crime. You can't investigate somebody to find a crime. You have to have a crime. That's the difference between America and the rest of the world. In order to be prosecuted in America, there has to be a crime first. You have to have committed something. If you committed nothing, you can't be charged with a crime. So essentially, that's what this investigation did.
Well, to me, it sounds much to do about nothing, but I don't know. It seems like it's more of a distraction and everything. Every time I turn around, they try to. I guess they think we're dyslexic and we have short attention spans, which we do. You get something bright and shiny.
Yeah, that's why. Yes,
and distract us, and we will pay attention to it. And everyone. Trump going to Singapore for Korea. I am excited after my entire life we've been in a conflict, not a war, but a conflict with North Korea. And the idea of possibly my grandchildren not growing up with that same threat of
Isn't that a wonderful thing to not have that hanging over their heads? It is truly amazing. The other amazing thing I thought was all of the talking heads were screaming that he went to this meeting and he was not prepared. He had no preparation. He doesn't believe in it. And I'm thinking to myself, he wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. He laid out his entire plan of the way he deals with things.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is laid out right in front of you if you read that book. He doesn't deviate from his plan.
Well, you got a point there. I mean, he's done things that, well, I saw something on Facebook the other day. It said all the presidents that are still alive, ex-presidents, former presidents we've had, do not like the president we have right now. And I thought about it, and I said, maybe that's the reason American people voted for this guy. Because we're tired of the presidents we've had in the last 30, 40 years that seem to be selling us down the road. I didn't realize that Canada had tariffs against American products coming to them.
Yes.
200% on dairy products.
I think a lot of people don't realize that, when you say to somebody, oh, we have a trade imbalance of $500 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's like a huge number. What does that actually mean? What does that mean for an individual that's trying to do trade? You're right. The dairy farmers, especially up in Wisconsin, 270% on a tariff on dairy products.
Yeah, going to Canada, correct.
Going to Canada. So, Trump is right, and we should be paying attention to American goods, and tariffs are a means to be able to correct a market and even it out. And, he's a person that believes that a deal, in order for a deal to be made, it should be made between two. He likes two people deals, two country deals. He doesn't like these massive deals that incorporate multitudes of countries. He likes to deal individually with each country.
Well,
it is the best way to protect America. And that's really what he's looking to do. So it is quite interesting to see the way this is being spun all over the place.
Well, I did not realize, I thought free trade meant free trade. We trade with you freely and you trade with us freely, but I have come to find out it doesn't mean that. It means it may be for you to spend free trade with us, but we have to pay a tariff to you. And I'm going, wait a minute, that's not the way I understood it to be.
Well, they flip around words again, and what they're doing is they made a distinction between free trade and fair trade. Mm-hmm. And I thought free trade was fair trade. But I guess not. Fair trade is something entirely different. So that should be quite interesting to see how this lays out. But I think making individual trade agreements with individual countries is a lot better than having these blanket, huge deals that are so big you can't even read what they are.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, any agreements that President Trump does with other nations has to be approved by Congress. Is that correct?
Yes, and he's one of the presidents that believes that. And he says that constantly, and especially when talking about the Iran deal. He said, how is that even an agreement? Congress never even looked at it. Mm-hmm. So he believes, and that's constitutional. So he's really paying attention to the Constitution, which is an amazing thing in itself. But I also read an interesting thing yesterday, and it seems as though in the November election, California is going to have an amendment on their ballot to break California into 3 separate states.
I think that's most excellent.
Isn't that a wonderful idea?
I remember when I think 13 other states tried to do that in 1861, how well that went over. But we shall find out if California, let them put it on a referendum. Let them secede from or come into 3 states, because California is different. It's definitely different from the South, from the North, from the East, from the West. They are definitely a different state.
Yeah, well, you know, we have a similar thing here in Florida.
Yes.
When you look at the Panhandle and we look at the peninsula, and it's like living in two different worlds. Because when you go to drive down the peninsula, when you make that right turn, and you're starting to go down,
Yep.
you're beginning to create on the radio, just even on the radio, the amount of foreign stations that have popped up is amazing. You don't find that here.
No,
because
you
here
don't.
We're a lot different.
Now, Florida, you can break it down into at least two different states. You got northern Florida, and then you got the other Florida. And I'm not trying to be derogatory, but the farther south you go past Ocala, the more north you go as far as demographics of people. You know,
Exactly, yes.
and the more north you go in Florida, the more south or southern you find such things in northern Florida such as sweet tea and and things like bless their heart. You know, and you don't get that down in South Florida. But
No,
but
not at
like
all.
I said,
Not at all. It's in South Florida. You have a hard time figuring out how to even talk to people if they don't speak English, which is quite sad.
Well, it's definitely going to make it interesting. But I'm glad to see California is going to put it on the ballot. And if they decide to Calex, you know, like Brexit, Calex, where they actually leave and become three separate states, I think that's a states' rights issue. Let them decide that.
I agree, and I was really glad to see that happen because we all know what starts in California has a way of creeping across the country.
Uh-huh.
So maybe Florida will have a wake-up call.
Well, we can only hope.
We can always hope. Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right.
I think it's going to be an excellent. You know, I keep hearing some of my Democratic friends talking about the blue wave that's coming. I haven't seen much of a blue wave. Only wave I've been seeing is a lot of people that are in the Democratic Party announcing they're not going to run, or they're staying very, very quiet about running.
Yeah, and their party goes deeper and deeper and deeper into the muck. I don't know how a Democrat, and I like Gwen Graham. She's a nice person.
Yes.
I've met her privately many, many times. But how can you vote for somebody when their party is totally has taken up a communistic flavor?
You're not alone, Karen. A lot of people are feeling the same way. It feels like the Democratic Party has now turned into the United Socialist Soviet Socialist Democratic Party.
Yes, exactly. So how can you vote for somebody knowing she may do a good job, but behind it is the Communist Party? I can't vote for that.
Well, Karen, on that note, I wish, we're going to find out what's going to happen. Thank you so much for calling. I'm up against a hard break here. I've got to go. The show's over. I'll talk to you again next week. And if people want to get up with you, they can go to KarenSchoen.com, KarenSchoen.com, and get on your website, right?
Thank you much.
All right. Talk to you later, everybody. All right. Bye-bye.